Hi, folks. We hope you're having a great day. And depending on where you're calling in from, either a good night, a good morning, or a good afternoon. My name is Greg DeLorco. I'm an associate director in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions. We're so excited to welcome you to this virtual information session on off-campus engagement and support. We're going to give it just a minute or two to make sure everyone has the time to come in, get settled, and ready for the webinar. But thanks again for attending. Okay, it looks like we're in a good spot already. So again, my name is Greg DeLorco. I'm an associate director in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions. I work primarily with first year specialized entry programs, and I've had the great privilege of working with many different enrolled NU-bound families and students. So I hope that you've enjoyed both your first and second semester. Incredibly enough, we're just a couple of months from welcoming you to Boston and to the Northeastern Boston campus. We're really excited to get the chance to introduce you to members of our off-campus engagement support team. I'm going to send it over to both Chester Lee as well as Mallory Perna and our incredible student, Anna, as they talk through what the off-campus engagement support team can do, answer some questions, and just be here as a general guide for you as you navigate this next step. So enjoy the session. I'll be here as well to support any way that I can. But Mallory, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Greg, and thanks everyone for being here. My name is Mallory Perna. I'm the director here in off-campus engagement and support, and I've been here for 7 years, so we're very much excited to help welcome you to Boston and get you started with your off-campus housing search.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Chester Lee. I'm one of the assistant directors here at Off-Campus Engagement and Support. I've only been here a short while, since August, but I have worked in many universities around the Boston area, so I know the area quite well. Anna.
Hi, my name is Anna. I am the co-op here at Off-Campus Engagement and Support. I help mainly assist with programs and advising students. I'll mostly be on chat today answering your questions. But I've been working here for about a month and I super enjoy it and excited to get these questions answered.
Wonderful. Okay, well, with that being said, we will jump right in because I know we only have a short amount of time. So Chester, thank you for sharing the slides here as we get started. So here's our office name, and here we are to welcome you to Boston. So we can progress forward and talk about what our office does. So we are located in Spear Hall. You have our phone number and our email here. We are very active on email every day, so you can always get in touch with us regardless of your time zone. We are mostly here to help navigate with the apartment search. That's usually the first touch point people have with us. So we not only have a database of apartment listings and recommended realtors that families and students have used previously, but we also have the ability to connect you to fellow students as well. So if you're someone that's not sure who you want to live with, we have an online tool to help you find someone that's going to be a good fit. We do a lot of education too around not only neighborhoods, transit, but also leases. So a big part of living off campus will be signing a lease, and we're going to go over that today. But we want to educate and empower students to understand what is in a lease contract, what you should be looking for before you sign it, and what clauses you may want to consider negotiating because they are legally binding, and these apartments require a lot of money up front. So we want you to be sure of the place that you're selecting. And then we are here throughout your time at Northeastern. So even after the apartment search process and the lease signing, we are here to help you navigate any concerns or provide advice. So that could be your renter's rights, your responsibilities, roommate concerns or questions. If you are wondering about a city resource, a campus resource, we are here to help you figure out next steps. So a lot of times we're working with students on individual cases to determine what they might need and how we can get them to where they would like to be. And then we do a lot of programming and outreach. So we have a community ambassador team that does a lot of social programming, and we also do a lot of educational programming. So we want to continue to get students engaged off campus and be your connection to the Northeastern campus. So we want you to get to know your neighborhood, understand the assets that are there, and how you can best navigate the university system here. And this is our agenda today. So we will talk a lot about apartment search since you all are focused on your housing for next year. We will talk a little bit about budgeting, the rental costs you can expect, how to find apartments in Boston and what that process looks like, leases and realtors, because many realtors actually are the ones that hold a lot of the rental listings here. So often you're working with a third party to find an apartment. And then we just want to be really mindful of educating you on scams, as we know that you all are looking for apartments while you're outside of Boston for the most part. So what to look for when looking virtually, and some resources to provide you with on campus and through our team. And then we'll do questions and answers, which you can put in the Q&A. So renting in Boston is unique. Even if you're someone coming from actually just a couple states over, it's unlike other rental markets. So it is Boston is a city, but it is a small city of neighborhoods, and Northeastern is nestled right here among Fenway, Mission Hill, and the South End, which is where a lot of students want to be because it is pretty much walkable to campus. Other communities might require public transit. So these communities are very walkable. The apartment search is often dictated by realtors and brokers that have these listings. So you're not always working directly with a landlord or property owner. While that might be the case, you're often working with a specific realtor or an agent that can show you many properties across the city. So they can definitely help save you time and also legitimize the search a little bit. So if you're working with a licensed realtor that's local to the area, they have a lot of knowledge and they're going to make sure to take the time to find what you need and help process all the paperwork and the payments so that you're able to get here, without a big headache and kind of ease the process along. Most leases in Boston are for 12 months. So it's very typical to see an apartment that is available on September 1st, and the expectation being that you'll be there through August 31st. And we know that that timeline is not always exactly in alignment with your academic timeline. So it's important, and we talk a lot about this later, is the idea of, is subletting allowed? Do I need my apartment for 12 months? What are my roommates doing and what kind of apartment are they looking for? And do I need to look at a short-term lease? And we can definitely advise students on how to identify ways to, find a contract that might be less than 12 months, or review your contract so you're in a place that allows for that flexibility. So please know that most leases are 12 months long. And then the cost is, in Boston, there's often upfront payments that need to be made to secure a place. And so this can sometimes get confusing when we talk about scams. So we want to be really upfront about the cost that you can expect, but we also want to let you know what's kind of normal in Boston. So most of the time, your 4 months up front are first month's rent, last month's rent, a security deposit, and a broker fee if you're working with a licensed broker. So there are times where there is no fee because you might be working directly with a building manager that's not licensed. So only a broker can charge the agency fee. And we see students spending between $1,200 and $1,500 per room on their rent monthly. And this is in a shared apartment. So there aren't studios or one-bedroom apartments at this cost. We're going to show you some rental costs on a future slide, but this gives you a good range of what you can expect to pay with a couple roommates. And it does not necessarily include utilities or furniture. So this is kind of a good baseline for what you might be paying just for rent. And here's what you can expect when living off campus. So a little bit different than on campus. While a lot of the apartments are right near our residence halls, you can expect to have a couple additional costs and responsibilities when you're living off campus. So not only are you paying your monthly rent, but you also will be in charge of your utility bills. So some apartments may include this, but others may not. So you might also need to pay for your heat and your electricity, any internet, and oftentimes furniture. So most apartments are unfurnished in Boston, and so students are often renting furniture or purchasing it on their own and then storing it when they're not there. So we talked a little bit about the different neighborhoods and how some of them are walkable to campus, but many of them might require transit. So we do have a public transportation system here that we call the T. And so you might find that a neighborhood that you select or an apartment that you like is maybe a 10 or 20 or 30-minute train right away. So it's just something to be aware of. And there won't be any resident assistant staff off campus. So the resident assistants are only in university housing. Most buildings that students live in off campus do not have a staff person. There are certain buildings that, of course, will have a security person downstairs possibly, but that's building to building. So it really depends on what type of facility you're in. Off campus, a lot of times students enjoy that they don't need to sign in their guests. There's a little bit less restrictions. There might be a guest policy on your lease saying that people cannot stay for more than a couple days, but you're not, you're not limited to how many people you can have. You don't have to sign them in every time they come in the door. So there is a more relaxed atmosphere off campus and just less oversight when it comes to that kind of security feature. You might be able to have pets. That will depend on what your lease contract determined. So we have had students have pets, emotional support animals, whatever they might need, but it's important to make sure that you mention that when you're in your apartment search phase. Students also enjoy that they get to choose their own furniture, so having a bigger bed instead of a standard single. Having a single room is pretty common off campus. So while you can share a room off campus to save cost, a lot of students are getting an apartment with the expectation that they have their own private room. And you might share a bathroom, but a lot of times these are 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units that students are sharing. And there might be additional fees and rules off campus. So going back to that lease contract, there's always going to be specific parameters for your unit, for your building that the owner has put into place. So it's important to follow those. And some questions to ask yourself. I know some students here might be thinking about on campus or trying to decide if they should move off. The best time to start looking really is now. So there are students signing leases now for next September. And so as a next step, these are the questions you want to ask so you can figure out where you might want to go off campus. So who do I want to live with, right? Like how many roommates do I want to have? How many bedrooms do we need? What neighborhoods are we interested in? Are we okay commuting? Are we only looking at a walkable distance? What kind of amenities in the neighborhood are important to you, or how close do you need to be to public transportation? What is your budget? And collectively, what are your roommates' budgets, right? So making sure that you and your roommates are on the same page about what you can afford a month, making sure that you're talking to your family or any co-signer, guarantor, or parent that might be helping fund your off-campus rental about what is reasonable. And then what are your plans for next year? So if you're coming to Boston, are you here for one semester? Are you here for multiple semesters? If you're not staying in the summer or you plan to take a co-op or go on a study abroad experience, what does that look like? Is your lease going to end? Are you going to have someone take over your lease? And what does your lease allow you to do? The do I have a co-signer question is really important because every undergraduate and even our graduate population, because students are not working full-time, they don't have an income to support off-campus living. So realtors and property owners will require that you have someone with a full-time income that can actually be signing the contract with you or as a co-signer. So if you don't pay your rent, they have someone that is responsible for paying those the missing rental payments. So everyone would be expected to have a family member available to them. And then I already mentioned public transportation, but very important as you look at neighborhoods. Okay, so let's spend a minute talking about budgeting. So I mentioned these first month's fees already. So first and last month's rent are usually due within, usually first month's rent is due at the time of application. Last month's rent is often due, within 30 days or so when you're signing your lease. So it's always important to ask your realtor or your landlord, when are these payments due? First month, last month, and security deposit. Some realtors might have other additional fees, such as a credit check fee, an application fee. So it's best practice to ask a realtor, what is your fee structure? When are these fees due? So then you can choose someone that you feel comfortable paying, because they do generally make their own payments, and realtor fees are usually 1 month's rent. So it's not a small payment necessarily. One-time expenses, I've mentioned furniture, since most places are not furniture or furnished, and then moving expenses. So this could be the cost of having things shipped here, the cost of getting a truck and moving things, the cost of storage if you're only going to be using some of your items some of the year. And then your monthly expenses. So you have your monthly base rent, utilities may or may not be included, and any cable or internet or streaming services, and then groceries, or if you're someone that wants to pay for a meal plan on campus to utilize dining halls or meal swipes, transportation costs, so being able to use the subway or buses here, And then renter's insurance, we always recommend that every student protect their personal belongings. This is really on or off campus, but should anything happen, you lose your laptop, or there's this past weekend, there was a freezing cold weather, a burst pipe causes water damage to your items. Renter's insurance can help you replace those things quite easily. So as we talk about budget, on the left-hand side of the slide here, places that you are generating income. So is your family contributing to your off-campus living expenses? Will you have a co-op in the future where you could also use funds to save up for off-campus living? Do you have any savings that you plan on using? And then financial aid. Sometimes students are able to have, if they have leftover financial aid after paying tuition, they might be able to apply that money to off-campus expenses. So that would be something to check in with your financial aid counselor about. And then just some best practices here for budgeting is that we always want students, after they have figured out their monthly income, to pay their rent first, to make sure that they are following their lease and they are paying it in full and on time to avoid any late fees or penalties. In addition to utilities, then food, and then of course to any future goals or fun that you might have, since Boston has a lot of great things to do. I mentioned the rental costs, and as in the last few years, we have seen costs increase, especially on our studio to 2-bedroom units. So these can sometimes be on the higher end of the spectrum. You'll see that there is a range, and these are also arranged by neighborhood. So Fenway, South End, Back Bay being very close to Northeastern, Roxbury, Mission Hill, and Jamaica Plain, just a little bit farther away depending on where you are in those communities, but you can see the cost breakdown can be different. So as you get farther away from the city, costs generally go down, or as you get maybe farther away from a transit hub, things can get more affordable. And then oftentimes it's by apartment. So different amenities will end up costing you more. So if you have an in-unit washer and dryer, if you have a parking space, all of those things might increase your monthly rent. Or if your utilities are included, they might have a higher monthly rent. And these are all on our website, so you can continue to refer back to these later. All right, and so after, I was going to pass it over to Chester, if that's okay with you, Chester, to talk about finding an apartment.
Great. Yeah. Hello once again. My name is Chester. I'm one of the assistant directors here. And I'm going to lead you through kind of finding an apartment in Boston. For those unfamiliar with Boston, it's a weird shape. We have many small kind of surrounding areas of Boston that are sectioned in their own way. And we have students that live in all of these areas. So the ones closest to Northeastern, as you'll see on this wonderful map where Northeastern is definitely the Fenway area, the South End area, Mission Hill, and Kenmore. A little further out, we have students that also live in Back Bay, Roxbury, and Jamaica Plain. And the most important thing to consider is like what you want to do for transportation. Many of our students take the green or orange lines to campus, and some of them also walk. So these are going to kind of dictate where you want to look. There are definitely some more desirable properties closer to campus that a lot of students look for, but there are also a lot that are kind of a little bit away if you're willing to commute. And for this, we use the housing database that we have. We are partnered with apartments.com, and we have a housing database that offers a lot of information, not just for properties, but also for potential roommates if you're looking for roommates, and also realtors and brokers if you want to save some time and use one of the 25 realtors that we currently work with in order to kind of just save some time on the apartment search, a little less stress, and they have access to some listings that usually go up before the database has them. So as you can see from the database, it's very similar to most search databases for apartments. However, you do need a Northeastern ID to log in. If you do not have one of those, we just ask that you create a guest account. You'll have to send information that you are an incoming Northeastern student, and we'll get you your Northeastern ID. But this way, when you're searching for roommates and or properties, these are Northeastern targeted properties. A lot of the landlords, property managers, and realtors know that you're a Northeastern student, and they'll cater kind of around your needs. You can sort by price, number of bedrooms, and extra amenities like in-unit washer dryer, parking. Those are all sortable functions in our database. And when looking for roommates, the roommate tab on the top, you can see that you'll be able to find a lot of Northeastern students, but you can also find surrounding area students as well. Northeastern is very close to other colleges and university like Wentworth, BU, and they're all also looking for off-campus places too. But their roommate profiles will be in that section, and you'll be able to filter by school as well. In addition to kind of our database that has the housing properties, the roommates, and the realtor list, Northeastern also has a Yammer community that's very active. This page is actually probably a little out of date. It says we have 31,000. We're closer to 50,000 people on our page. And this is more of a student-to-student forum. So you kind of post what you have, or if you're looking for something, or if you need something for the fall, and other students kind of respond. The benefits of using this, obviously, are that it is student to student, but we don't really monitor it. We leave it much like any Facebook group or WhatsApp page that students use just to talk with each other. But you might have to scroll down. There's not really a sort function, but there is also a lot of information on our Yammer page. And when you're doing your search process, we always make sure to tell you, if you can, to visit the property either in person or virtually. We want to give you kind of the safest way to kind of approach these listings. We understand not all of you will be in Boston, so virtual tours are also a way to look at them. But also make sure to look at them live, because sometimes the insides may not be exactly what it looks like in the pictures. You might be able to hear like a train track, and if that's something you don't want, you'll also want to be there to kind of hear that. A lot of the pictures on showings are from when they were new, and they might not be in new condition anymore, but you just want to make sure everything is accurate. You want to avoid being scammed in those cases, so it's important to get those walkthroughs. You want to ask about all the amenities, because they're not required to provide a lot of things that are commonly provided. For example, refrigerators, ovens, in-unit washer dryers. Those are all amenities you want to ask about, because if they are provided, it should say it in the lease, and that way you know and that they're accountable. But if they're not provided, you should ask if they can be provided. Would they ever be provided? Can you repair them? And those are all extra things that you want to ask about. I just named a couple, but there are a lot more, like parking, pets, just a lot of different things you want to ask about that fit your needs as well. Always ask when you need to. And a lot of these property managers, realtors, they're going to try to sell you their property. But you should do your research. You should look at a few properties. Unless you really love your first property, there are definitely lots of options. You don't want to necessarily let these realtors kind of sell you. I mean, I guess you do want to let them sell you, but you also want to do your research. You want to make sure that you are very sure, because you're going to be here for at least a year or a semester, that you want to live here. And some general kind of background to like look for your apartments is you want it to be clean and sanitary. So you want to make sure that at least in the tour that there's no obvious signs of tampering, no obvious like pests. You want to make sure that there's smoke and carbon monoxide detectors for safety reasons, emergency egresses, that they locks on the windows and doors so that it's secure, and that it has just general good common space lighting and areas to move. And as we said before, we always recommend renter's insurance. It doesn't cost that much, depending on the type of insurance you're getting. But as we saw this past weekend, there was some damage caused by the cold weather in Boston. So it's important to get renter's insurance. Some properties will require you to get renter's insurance on the lease, but you're allowed to choose your own insurance unless they provide one through their building. And so the types of lease that exist in Boston, the most common is definitely the 12-month lease. Boston is a unique city in that the 12-month leases usually run from September to August. But with so many students around, a lot of the leases also have a sublet clause. So what a sublet clause allows you to do is, if you're only going to stay for one semester, it allows you to try to find a sublet in order to take that place. So you're not paying rent for the time that you're not here. Rather, somebody else who needs to use the apartment is. What's more rare in Boston is the month-to-month lease, where you just pay per month until you no longer need it. That's becoming less and less common in Boston, but it is something you can still find. And the lease itself is the contract. It's the legally binding document that guarantees you certain things that are listed in that lease, but also as a tenant, what you're going to do, when you're going to pay rent, how much the rent is. You're going to keep the apartment clean and sanitary yourself. So those are all going to be outlined in the lease. It describes all the terms that you need, move-in dates, move-out dates, trash disposal, and it includes a lot of contact information. You want to always make sure that you have the landlord and maintenance contacts on the lease, just in case any emergencies come up. But you also want to make sure you have your own names on the lease to protect yourselves in case anything needs to go to court or there's any legal issues that you want to report. You want to be your name on the lease. In Boston, there are lots of places where there are students that kind of try to live off lease. We don't recommend that because then there's no guarantee that you're supposed to be there. There's no contract that says you can be there. And it's just not as safe to not be on the lease. You have no legal right to live there. So we want to make sure that all students kind of have their names on the lease, have the contract, and know exactly who the landlord and property manager are. As I mentioned before, there's lots of small things you want to ask for, and these usually appear in the addendum. Anything from parking to trash disposal fees, pets. These are things that are going to be listed that you want to kind of advocate for if you want, or just make sure that they're listed if you don't want them as well. And a lot of these extra clauses you can usually negotiate. Pets is actually a very common one to negotiate these days. Also like right of entry, if they're going to show the apartment, how long they need to wait before contacting you. So you're going to find all these in the addendum section of a lease. All right, and so as we said, you want to do in-person or virtual tours of a property in order to make sure that it's real. And other simple things you can do to protect yourself to make sure that the listing is real is our database. We contract with apartments.com, as we said. They help us vet the properties. But you still want to make sure yourself that they are safe, but most of them are vetted through apartments.com. There's a clear explanation of how much it is, what the fees are, what the application process is. If they ask for extra paperwork, like an I-9 or a W-20, that's actually usually a good sign because it shows they're doing the due diligence by reporting everything to the government. You want to make sure that all the housing codes, fire alarms, egresses, all those are up to date. And you kind of also just want to do a quick Google search or maybe ask a friend about both the property and the realtor. These are all on the mass.gov site, available through our website. But you can also ask us. If we've heard of anything about a property, it'll be in our internal database as well. But a quick Google search will usually also find all issues there are. And we also have an apartment hunting checklist on our website for you to use. So some don'ts when you're kind of searching for a property: make sure never to wire or send money to anything you haven't seen or anyone you haven't met. The only ways these days, I guess, to pay for rent usually is either a check or a bank transfer. That way you can track the money. But you have to make sure that you don't send money if you haven't seen it or you haven't met the person that's showing you around. Make sure to read the entire lease. That's very important. We help students with lease inquiries. We have a whole page on lease education. So we highly recommend anybody looking for apartments to look at their entire lease and ask us any questions you have if you don't understand a section. And once again, scams aren't just about money. Sometimes there is identity theft. So make sure before you give out any personal information, before you send any money, you Google, it's a real person. You Google, it's a real place. You do your tour, and then I think it's okay for you to start filling out an application with personal information. And those are just general safety tips. We try to protect students, and we want to make sure to always repeat these because we still have students that don't follow all our steps, and unfortunately, they do get scammed from time to time. So I think there was one question about the timeline I might have already answered. Most students for the fall process sign a lease between January and April, And the reason for this is most properties require a 6 to 9 month renewal kind of timeline. So in this window, a lot of students for the following year are deciding if they either want to move properties or stay where they are. And until they decide if they want to renew or not, a landlord cannot list something on the market because they still have to get the current tenant's opinion of what they want to do. And then the properties will start showing up and getting taken down as quickly as possible. So there are definitely still a lot of apartments out there. Some haven't even come to the market yet because they have until April to kind of decide if they want to renew. So you do still want to start doing your planning. As we mentioned, we gave you some budgeting tips. We gave you some search tips. And the next step is to like kind of look and go through those leases and contracts. So some important things, as we said, you want to talk about kind of all involved parties, whether that be family, potential roommates, financial aid, about what you can do in preparation for this apartment search. You want to confirm what are things you absolutely need. If you have a pet that you absolutely need to live with, or if you have a car that you absolutely need because you go home a lot. These are all things that you'll want to kind of flesh out. And roommates, make sure you start looking for roommates early if you don't have roommates. If you already have roommates, make sure to discuss anything like who's taking out the trash, who's cleaning the dishes, who's buying the groceries. These are all important things that are going to help your living off campus experience. And for the parents of families of students, you want to talk to your student. It's important to kind of just have everything out there, write it down, have it in an email, because there are things maybe you don't know that you didn't like, or things you definitely need but nobody else knew. For example, you have to be at bed by midnight. I don't know, have to wake up by 6 a.m. You wouldn't want to live next to a T-track because it's too loud in the morning. Those are just certain things, like what kind of realtor you want to look for, one that's going to give you 5 properties at once. And then the apartment, are you able to walk? All these things that we already talked about, they should just be out in the open as well. And back on the leases, once again, contact us if you ever have questions about leases. Okay, resources to know. In terms of safety and security, everything around Northeastern, all areas, all neighborhoods, everything is reported on the City of Boston and State of Massachusetts sites about statistics. We try to do our best to educate and provide safe and secure environments for all our students. We have a lot of students in properties, and if properties ever come to us that have been an issue, we remove them from the database. So that's kind of one of the things we try to do to help students as well. Transportation, our website has information about how to get student discounted passes for both parking and the MBTA. So please, please, please go visit our website in order to get access to these. I know there were a few questions about dining, and you can look on the NU dining page, and they will have resources about getting a meal plan, even if you're off campus. The same goes for lockers in the Curry Student Center and study rooms all around campus as well. Just because you're off campus doesn't mean you don't have access to all these on-campus amenities as a student. And in order to stay up to date about living off campus, feel free to join our newsletter or ask any of our community ambassadors, and follow us on social media. We're always available. The easiest ways to reach us are definitely email, social media. We can respond pretty quickly, but just give us a call or set up a meeting if you have any other questions. I will leave this page up for a little bit as it is for kind of our contact information that you can see. And yeah, I think the next slide, yep, is the Q&A. So I'll just leave this page as our current page.
Chester, thanks so much for sharing all this helpful information. There were so many different helpful resources that you touched on, so that's great. I'm thinking through a couple of different questions that are coming through the chat. and then a couple of others that I just noted. One of which is, what are one of the common mistakes that students make as they're trying to work through the off-campus housing selection process, and maybe just other things that families should be aware of as they start trying to navigate this process?
Sure. One thing I think that's very important is when you're kind of looking for an apartment, a lot of students often just find one place, view it, and say, like, this is good enough, and we're going to take this place. And I advise against that. All the realtors and landlords are going to make it seem like you have to take their property, but this is more of a sales tactic other than anything else. I know I answered one question in the chat already about kind of availabilities, and the reason January to April is so crucial is because not all properties are even on the market yet. You have this renewal period where some of the good ones, maybe the students are still deciding if they want to stay there and will be open later. You also don't want to wait too long. So this is kind of the balancing the fine line between options and like prime real estate. So always do your research. Ask other students. There are definitely a lot of properties available on the market. Right now is a great time to start looking. But by March, April is going to be kind of the tail end of where we suggest. But definitely do your research. Don't just take the first property you see. I would say at least see 3 properties. I think that's a good rule of comparison. You can see more than that, but at least 3 is what I recommend for students.
That's great. Another question that came through is just a price comparison between living on campus and off campus. I don't think it's necessarily apples to apples, but maybe just giving us a general breakdown of what the monthly expenses might be for a student that's living off campus and how it could somewhat compare to what the on-campus expectation is.
Yeah, I'll be quite honest. There's nothing that beats the convenience of living on campus. On campus has the shortest commute. You're right there. If there's any type of weather emergency, you're always right there. You have way more resources. So convenience-wise, on campus is definitely always the way to go. However, in terms of general comparisons, generally living off campus is probably cheaper depending on how you do your research or what you're looking for. If you're looking for a penthouse in Back Bay, I can't say that's going to be cheaper than living on campus. But in general, most of these off-campus properties are targeting college students, and they're trying to give you the incentive to move off instead of on. And you definitely get a little more square footage per person than living on campus. I haven't looked at the square footage recently about online, but I have seen pictures of what you get on campus. And I know that off campus, you can definitely have more space to be yourself. You're not sharing a room with anybody else, but it's also what you're comfortable with. The convenience, you can't beat on campus, but the general, price, it's probably a little bit lower. But you do have to cook your own food. So maybe some people don't like to cook.
Chester, your office is involved in so much more than just finding living areas and apartments around the city of Boston. Can you share a little bit about how the student experience translates to living off campus, such as like involvement in clubs or organizations, or just overall being part of the Northeastern campus community?
Sure. So we have a variety of programs. We try to keep our off-campus students engaged as well. So, I mean, this past weekend, despite how cold it was, we still had 41 students come with us to the aquarium. So yeah, I know it was negative degrees and we saw students trek out, maybe because it was free. But we try to get students engaged with the city of Boston as well. So our breakfast club is one of kind of our signature programs where we do community cleanups and students get together after doing some community service to kind of just eat, chat, and meet each other around both the Mission Hill and Fenway areas. We do a lot of tabling around campus as well to try to engage students and just make them aware. You get to talk to our community ambassadors who all live off campus and kind of just share what they know about the living off campus experience. So we try to do lots and lots of small programs throughout the semester to just also engage with our students that might not feel engaged when they're off campus.
That's great. And I give the students that went to the aquarium a lot of credit. I was not one of those people that was venturing out in the cold this past weekend. So they
Yeah,
are
neither was I. I was
awesome.
actually surprised when we had that many still go. We were sure that there were going to be less, but
That's awesome. That's great. A common question that's come through relates to meal plans. And I know you touched on this right at the end, the fact that if you're living off campus, you still have access to the university resources, including meal plans. Can you talk through maybe just like a common a common meal situation or recommendations that you might make for different types of students and their different types of dietary restrictions?
sure. I actually was doing an apartment search. I was helping a student with an apartment search the other day, and they were actually looking for a property that was literally near a Whole Foods, just because like so they could do it commute wise. But Boston's gotten really good. I think with around Northeastern, within a 5-minute walk, almost in any direction, you'll find some kind of convenience store or restaurant that you can order from. I know actually there's a lot of student discounts for the local area places too, if you choose to order food from them. Um, I can't. I know we have it on our website or some website. It might not be on our website about kind of just all the restaurants in the area of Northeastern that are available. There are a lot. um, and I am not a person that has dietary restrictions, so I would definitely do your own research as well on that. But there is a lot available because they know that Northeastern is here. They know we have tens of thousands of students, and I mean that's just good for the restaurants as well.
Agree completely. We had a question just come through about the student apartment search database that you all provide. And the question is about our reviews, student reviews available through the database. And I actually want to expand on that. Can you talk a little bit also about how students can get a sense of different neighborhoods that they're looking into? Especially for students that are in Oakland and in London, might not have the opportunity to visit the neighborhoods right now in February.
Sure. Let's see. On our website, we have a lot of information about all the neighborhoods. I've posted one of our neighborhood pages in this. Oh, I'm on the wrong chat. But I post one about the neighborhoods, just giving like general information of what train lines they're on, where they are in Boston, and what to kind of expect from each neighborhood. So it is, yeah, they're all different. They're all slightly different. Some areas have more multifamily homes, some have more like large condos. So those are kind of the different types of living environments that you can see depending on different areas and neighborhoods of Boston. Um, sorry, Greg, I forgot the first part of the question you just asked.
Yeah, that's okay. It was a lengthy one. Student reviews or student reviews available in the rental database that you all provide.
They are not. And the reason is because of the way they're listed. However, property reviews are always, they're available versus Google searches. But a lot of our students, what we recommend is talk to the current tenants. If you're looking at a property, it's very easy to ask the landlord. It's like, oh, can we get in contact with the current tenants? How do they like it? And through the student kind of network, you'll kind of find out more than any official review would show you, because the official reviews are sometimes, I think, glammed up a bit. You want to ask the people that are currently living there. You want to ask, like, just look at general Google reviews of, oh, did you like this realtor? Did you like this landlord? And they will give you some brutally honest answers as we see online. And we go through these as well. So our database, where it doesn't have reviews, we have kind of, if there's any reported incidents, multiple violations, etc., we remove them from the database. So whereas the database isn't review, if it's on the database, it means it's not in trouble, if that makes sense in that regard. So that's how we kind of review it in our way, but we just kind of cycle through in that regard.
And if I could just jump in there, we also have a Yammer page that you can post on about properties. That is a good student to student forum for any questions that you might have about that.
And your student perspective is always welcome. So thanks for that. And Chester, I just want to say thank you to your team for providing such an insightful 45-minute information session on what this process looks like. If students and families have questions, can you just put the email again in the chat for everyone so that they can reach out directly to your team? I want to thank everyone that took the time to be part of this session, that came out in attendance. We're really excited to welcome all of you officially to the Northeastern Boston community. I know there were a number of questions in the chat about on-campus housing. There was an email that was sent to all NU-bound students with the opportunity to opt in to on-campus housing. The due date for that was January 20th. I highly encourage you to talk with your student, make sure that they, if they were interested, that they did opt in. And then there is a fall deposit deadline for February 13th. If you have on-campus specific questions, you can email housing@northeastern.edu and they'll get back to you within 24 to 48 hours. But Chester, thank you so much to your team. Anna, thanks so much for taking the time and supporting and giving that student perspective. And again, we look forward to welcoming you all to the Boston community in the very near future. Take care.
Thank you.